I have been an addictions therapist and a person in long-term recovery for more than a decade, nearly 2 decades for my own addiction. And I have witnessed relapse after relapse after relapse. And in John Owen's book, I finally figured out why. Let's get into it. My name is Casey and I am a husband, a father of 4, and for the purpose of this video, I've been in recovery for 20 years and an addictions counselor for 13, and I have seen the problems that come about when people don't take the fullness of God into their recovery. If you would like to be able to continue to promote a future of faith, fatherhood, and freedom in America, I would love your support. Please like the video, and I'd love to earn your subscription. In his book, The Mortification of Sin, John Owen states that the way to kill addictions and other sins in your life is not by simply avoidance or subtracting them from your life or dodging the stimulus or the ways that they get triggered. The way to do it is by union with the God who created us and holds his hand over the natural law of the neurological ways our brain works, as well as the physical earth and all the drugs and all the other things that are there that have triggered these symptoms, these cravings, these addictions in us.
Also, Owen's personal journey and struggle, he was having to resist the pull of these other kinds of unbiblical or anti-gospel doctrines.
Yeah, you can't read Owen on temptation and sin, for example, or mortification, and not come to the conclusion he's talking about the battles going on in his own soul.
Yeah.
And he wants to fight sin with all that is within him and wants other people to do that as well. The beauty of Owen is he exemplifies this, what he's promoting here, that with your totality of your life, you live fully for the Lord.
John Owen brings this about in his book, and I should say ahead of time that he is a Puritan author, which means that he has some very specific, robust, strict views about how you operate in a world of godliness. And John Owen's The Mortification of Sin, one of the most famous lines that he says is, "You will either be killing sin or sin will be killing you." And I want to read directly from the book a couple of really punchy quotes that I found so useful. Reading from page 47, it says, "Every unkilled sin will certainly do one of 2 things. It will weaken the soul and take away your strength, and it will darken the soul and take away your peace and comfort." Haven't we all experienced this when we have a season where we're doing things that we wish we ought not do, and yet our soul is darkened? It weakens our spirit and our constitution to be able to do other good things. We almost feel unworthy of being able to practice anything faithful and good and true and beautiful because our sin has given us that seedling of doubt. Am I really one of God's children? Am I really worthy to do this? If God has compelled me to act in a certain way, can I still do that while I'm operating in a season of sin and doubt? On page 92, it says, "If a particular sin has had you in its grip for a very long time and you've left it alone without trying to kill it and heal the damage it has done to your soul, then your condition is very dangerous. Have you allowed worldliness, ambition, work, or other things to consume all your time and take away from the things of God? Has spicy lust continued to go wild inside of you, and have you spent your days looking at spicy things or having spicy fantasies?" He doesn't say spicy, obviously. YouTube, I can't say exactly what he said. Ironically, this is a Puritan book, far from being naughty. "Then you've got a very, very serious problem indeed. This is exactly what happened with David, who said, 'My wounds stink and fester because of my foolishness.'" So he's saying that if the sin has been embedded for a very long time, and as a man, you can imagine what that sin might be that usually overtakes our hearts and minds more fervently than anything else. And if that has been embedded in you for a very long time, it is a dangerous condition indeed. And I would say, as a man who's had seasons of sin, which my family and I paid for greatly, it is of the utmost importance to try to cut these things out from the root. That was one thing that struck me that he said in his work, The Mortification of Sin, is that you must take an axe to the root. Instead of trimming the leaves, trimming the branches, and seeing what happens, we must take an axe to the root of the problem, and that ultimately, John Owen says, is your relationship with God itself. That leads me to the next quote, which says, all other ways of mortification are vain. Mortification meaning just to put to death. All helps leave us helpless. It must be done by the Spirit. And this is what John Owen takes to task a lot of the Catholic attempts to try to deal with sin, and the ways that they sort of ritualize and sort of say the prayers and do the things without necessarily improving or availing themselves to that relationship with God, which is ultimately the way forward and the way that they will punch through the sin that they're suffering from. Here is the unfortunate truth from page 106, and I have experienced this personally, and we should take it as a grace of God that He might try to help us correct our sin by encouraging or at least allowing the consequences of our sin to come to light. It says, though God may not completely cut you off because of your sin, there's a very good chance He will apply the rod of discipline. Though He'll forgive your sins, He'll take action to stop you from committing them anymore. Remember David and all the trouble he had. So God will, if you're addicted to spicy things online, He will prevent you possibly from meeting a woman who would be of good repute or somebody that would be respectable, because there's the potential that that seedling of doubt that you have inside of you will prevent you from trying with these types of women, because like I have this difficulty, and if I put myself in a relationship right now, it will ultimately be bad for both of us. And so those are some of the naturally occurring consequences. Or if you allow your lust and spiciness to pay itself forward into actual relationships, then we may have, pregnancies out of wedlock or other, sexually STIs. And all those things might be the natural order consequences of our sin that God will allow us, not as a punishment necessarily, but as a way to try to give you grace to come back and to actually cut it out by its root. This is something that was so convicting, and I, again, have seen this true in my own life. Owen makes another critical distinction that addictions especially need to hear. You can hate the consequences of your sin without hating the sin itself. You can hate hangovers, lost jobs, broken marriages, and still secretly love comfort, escape, or control that addiction seems to give us. Owen would say that that's not repentance, it is regret. True mortification, he argues, happens when faith is actively fixed on Christ. Set faith at work on Christ for killing of thy sin. Owen says that it's very possible that some of us have a natural vulnerability to certain types of sin. And I am only about 5'8.5" on a good day, so I have some short man syndrome, natural proneness to certain kinds of sin. I feel like I have more to prove. I work harder because of my insecurities, or maybe even I feel insecure with women, although my wife is very beautiful and I sort of work through that ahead of my marriage. There are certain proneness, and obviously I have an addictive personality, which is why I drank and used substances for 12 years before I was able to quit, with many, many consequences that were required for me to get to that point. So I have a natural proneness to certain types of sin, a desire to prove myself, a desire to numb myself, and I must understand those and try to speak to those vulnerabilities, not just with a spirit-filled relationship with God, but also with some things that Anna Lemke would call self-binding. Like if I drive the same direction every day and I pass the same liquor store every day, maybe I should change my route, even if it takes an extra 7 minutes. The consequences of my using that alcohol would be much greater than me just taking another way home from work or whatever it happens to be. And this can be very understandable in terms of our approach of the internet, because men have a natural desire and design to look at women. And so if we are going on Instagram or some of these other social media platforms that the algorithm has spoken to that, then we must limit our access. We must take steps to speak to our vulnerability. This is the end state that John Owen is trying to get to. Again, in his book, The Mortification of Sin, I highly recommend. It's only about 200 pages, and there are translations that take the Puritan wordiness and verbose nature of it and make it very simple. This particular one was translated by Aaron Wrenn, R-E-N-N. Here is the end state that John Owen wants us all to get to. And he says this on page, heck. It's about page 157, okay? So he says, set your faith at work on Christ for the killing of sin. Christ's blood is the great cure-all for souls that are sick with sin. Set your faith on him. Live in this reality, and you will die a conqueror. I am serious. You will, though you're through the providence of God, live to see your evil desires killed at your feet. Wouldn't that be great news that our desires would be liberated from us? And just like the evil forces that bring those about, they would be cast asunder. It's not possible in totality. Obviously, we know all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God, and everyone will continue to sin. But maybe, just maybe, we can defeat the worst of it, and we can begin then to peel the onion back and work on the lower layers. What are the actual behaviors behind some of my proneness to addictions, and how might I beat those back? John Owen, even in the time that he wrote this book and the time in which he lived, already saw some of the writing on the wall of psychology and other more modern methods to try to kill your sin being used in ways that was ultimately not going to be fully effective. He says, I can confidently say that setting your soul by faith on expectation of relief from Christ, because he is a merciful high priest, will do more to kill your sin and evil desires, and do it faster than any of the most extreme self-discipline and self-help methods anyone has ever done. Let me add that nobody has ever eternally lost due to being overcome by any sin, evil desire, corruption, or what have you, if he could raise his soul by faith to an expectation of relief from Christ. So we should avail ourselves to God and ask for the relief that we need, and then set our expectation on it happening. It's like Christ says, where if you have the faith of a mustard seed, you can ask this mountain to move from here to there, and it will do that. I believe that this is exactly what he means. The addictions in my life were a mountain. I was drinking and using all of the substances that you could possibly imagine to excess, and really I had set my expectation on not being alive anymore, and I behaved in ways that reinforced that belief, and it was a torrential downpour of bad behavior. But I wasn't even convicted about it, because I did not know the God who would actually be able to set me free from that. And once I did, my convictions and my addictions began to be torn asunder. This is the message that Owen is driving home, and in his conclusion and overview, he says this: the Spirit alone reveals to us the fullness of Christ for our relief. The Spirit alone establishes in the heart an expectation of help from Christ. The Spirit alone brings the cross of Christ into our hearts with sin-killing power. The Spirit alone is the author and finisher of our sanctification. If we are trying to fight our addictions and our bad behavior apart from the Spirit of God, John Owen says in The Mortification of Sin that we will just be trimming the tree instead of taking an axe to the root. And ultimately, it's past time to cut our sin out from the root, because, men of God, the world is falling apart. If you haven't noticed, we are headed towards civil unrest, if not worse. And God's people must, the men of this country and of this world who are with God, we must be prepared for battle. First, with the Spirit. We must take the Spirit with us, take it into our lives and hearts, and then put on the shield and enter into the fray, because the world needs us. Men of God, the world needs us. It's time to fight back. It's time to fight for our children, for a future, and to try to give hope to those who are so hopeless out here. But if we carry the heavy knapsack of our addictions, like 10 million stones, small pebbles, into battle with us, we will ultimately be disarmed, and in some cases we won't even enter into the fight. If you would like to fight with me for a future of faith, fatherhood, and freedom, where we can all fight sin and bad behavior together, please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you for watching to the end of the video. God bless.